picture this scenario, just for a second, if you would.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
You wake up, you make your coffee, and you walk to the front door to check the mail.
Right, the usual morning routine.
Exactly. And you look down at the doormat, and usually it's just this completely predictable landscape,
Hmm.
right?
Oh, yeah. Usually a pretty depressing landscape, to be honest.
Right. You've got the glossy, hypersaturated supermarket flyers that just go straight into the recycling bin.
Yep, or the local takeout menus.
Yeah. And you've got those stiff, windowed envelopes from your insurance company or, the bank.
The ones carrying that very specific low-level hum of administrative dread.
Yes. Perfect way to describe it. It's all junk or it's obligations.
Mhm.
But today, sitting right in the middle of that corporate debris, there is an anomaly.
Ooh, an anomaly?
Yeah, it's a physical letter. It's got a handwritten address. The ink is like a little uneven.
Okay, I love this already.
And the stamp is sitting just a fraction of a millimeter crooked in the top right corner. And instantly, before you've even picked it up, the entire temperature of your morning just shifts.
It creates an immediate physical reaction. I mean, you haven't even opened it yet.
Right, exactly.
But your brain immediately recognizes that you are looking at a fundamentally different category of object.
It really is. It feels different.
Because it isn't a demand on your resources, and it isn't an advertisement trying to, manipulate your desires.
Right. It's just this tiny, unexpected heartbeat sitting on your doormat.
Exactly. It's a piece of localized evidence that someone, somewhere, stopped what they were doing to think exclusively about you.
And that shift, that specific feeling, is exactly what we're exploring in today's deep dive.
And it is such a rich topic to dive into.
It really is. So we're looking at this brilliant document today. It's an open letter from the Postal Club, and it's titled In Praise of the Slow Letter.
And calling it just a document, it almost does it a disservice, honestly.
I completely agree. It functions way more like a survival manifesto for the modern mind.
Yeah, it's this incredibly deep exploration of letter writing, the mechanics of human attention, and what the open letter calls the lost art of being known.
The lost art of being known. That phrase just stuck with me all week.
It's powerful. And the premise they operate from is critical to understand right up front because it diagnoses a very specific modern condition.
Right, because we are living in this era of just unprecedented, relentless connection.
Exactly. I mean, we have instant access to the daily minutia of literally everyone we've ever met.
Yeah, from our closest friends to like the person we did a group project with in high school 15 years ago.
Right. Yet, alongside all this hyperconnection, we are seeing these epidemic levels of a very modern flavor of loneliness.
It's so counterintuitive, isn't it?
It is. And the overarching thesis of this open letter from the Postal Club is that over the last 20 years, we have made this quiet structural trade.
A trade we didn't even really know we were making.
Exactly. We traded deep knowing for superficial seeing. We see everyone constantly, but we don't necessarily know them anymore.
Which brings us to our core mission for this deep dive. We're going to unpack why this ancient, completely analog practice, just putting pen to paper, might actually be the structural antidote to that exact loneliness.
And we want to explore how you, the person listening right now, can use this incredibly simple tool to reclaim your own sense of deep focus.
Yeah, and to build genuine empathy. But, to understand why the letter works as a cure, we kind of have to spend some time diagnosing the disease first.
We have to look at the environment we are currently swimming in.
Right. And the open letter has this phrase that just stopped me in my tracks. It calls our modern digital environment a strange new weather.
The strange new weather.
Right.
It's an incredibly precise metaphor when you really think about it.
How so?
Well, when you think about weather, it's not something you actively opt into. You don't, sign a terms and conditions agreement to experience a thunderstorm.
Right, you just walk outside and it's raining.
Exactly. You just have to navigate it because it's the atmosphere you live inside. And the strange new weather of our time is digital.
It's composed entirely of these small, brightly lit rectangles.
Yeah. We just walk around bathed in the glow of these fragmented moments from other people's lives.
But the defining characteristic of this weather, as the source points out, is that it isn't natural at all.
Not even a little bit. Those fragments are curated and arranged by software algorithms that we didn't write.
Right, designed for corporate purposes that we can't even fully name or control.
Exactly. And the universal vernacular we've adopted for this is the feed.
The feed. Which is such a weird word when you stop and think about it.
It really is. The text points out something funny about that. Nobody ever held a global conference and decided to name it the feed. It just sort of happened.
But think about the biological implication of that word. Feed.
Yeah.
It implies consumption, right?
Yeah, it implies being tethered to a trough.
Wow, yeah. And we are scrolling through this feed everywhere. On commuter trains, while standing in line at the pharmacy.
While lying in bed at night right before we try to sleep.
Oh, that's the worst one. And we do it when we're bored, obviously.
Sure, but we also do it when we are anxious.
Right, or when we are avoiding a difficult conversation.
Or when we're just trying to numb a vague sense of unease. The environment is engineered for exactly that kind of behavioral loop.
And the open letter makes a really vital distinction here that I think we need to highlight for anyone listening.
Oh, about personal blame.
Yes, that experiencing distraction in this environment is not a personal moral failing.
I am so glad they emphasize that. If you feel like your attention span is fracturing, it's not because you suddenly lack willpower.
Right, it's not a character flaw.
No, the feed is designed by some of the most highly compensated, brilliant behavioral psychologists and engineers on the entire planet.
Yeah, their entire job, literally their only job, is to make that software exactly compelling enough to keep you inside it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Maximizing the time you spend looking at the screen so your attention can be packaged and sold to advertisers.
All right, so going back to your weather analogy,
Yeah.
if you walk outside in a hurricane, you don't blame yourself for getting wet.
That's a great way to put it. The environment is designed to soak you.
But, just because it isn't our fault doesn't mean there isn't a massive psychological cost to all of this.
Oh, the cost is staggering.
The open letter gets into the arithmetic of this distraction, and the numbers are just terrifying.
What was the stat they used?
The average adult is now checking their phone roughly 150 times a day.
150 times. Just let that sink in for a second.
I know. It's wild.
Think about the mechanics of what happens during every single one of those 150 checks.
Every glance at a notification is an interruption.
It interrupts a train of thought. It interrupts a conversation you're having with a colleague.
It interrupts your physical presence in the room you are literally standing in.
Exactly. And this leads to a crucial psychological concept introduced in the source material here, which is residue.
Let's bring down residue, because, to be honest, this fundamentally changed how I view my phone.
It's a game changer. I mean, we tend to think that checking a text message takes, 3 seconds?
Right, and then we assume we are immediately back to whatever we were doing. No harm, no foul.
Exactly. We treat human attention like a light switch that can just instantly flick between subjects.
But neurologically, that is not how cognition works at all, is it?
Not even close. When you shift your focus from, say, writing a complex email or listening to your partner talk about their day.
And you glance down to read a fragmented text message.
Right. When you do that, your brain has to completely reorient its cognitive load.
And when you look back up, you don't instantly return to 100% engagement with the room.
No, because a portion of your processing power is still lagging behind thinking about the text message you just read.
And that lag, that is attention residue.
Precisely. The interruption was maybe 3 seconds, but the residue lingers for minutes.
Now multiply that residue by 150 times a day.
It's exhausting just thinking about it. Over months and years, that constant cognitive fracturing physically thins out your capacity for depth.
It really thins us out. I mean, we become skimming machines instead of deep diving machines.
And this directly impacts how we experience empathy, which is really the core focus point here.
Yes, let's talk about empathy. Because the text points out there's a vast difference between data gathering and true empathy.
Oh, absolutely.
I'll give you an example from my own life. I have a friend who I text with constantly.
Okay.
Throughout the day, we just fire off these little updates. And because of this, I know an absurd amount of trivia about his daily life.
Right? You know the logistics?
Yeah. I know he had a mediocre turkey sandwich for lunch.
Yeah.
I know he saw a weird dog on the subway.
You know exactly which of his coworkers is driving him crazy this week.
Exactly. So I have a high volume of information about his day.
You are seeing his life unfold in real time.
But the open letter from the Postal Club challenges us to ask, does that mean I actually know him?
And the answer is usually no, because texting is highly efficient for transferring logistical data.
Or like fleeting emotional reactions.
Right. Exactly. But it lacks the bandwidth for deep empathy.
Yeah, that same friend texting you 12 times a day might not have any idea what you are actually terrified of when you're staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m.
They don't know the quiet, unglamorous hopes you have for the next decade of your life.
It made me think of this analogy while I was reading it. managing our relationships through these constant, fragmented text threads.
Yeah.
It's a lot like trying to cross a river by jumping quickly across a series of small, slippery stepping stones.
Oh, I like that.
Right. Because you have to move fast, you have to be reactive, and you can only ever focus on the very next step.
You get across the river, sure, but you never actually stop to look at the water.
Exactly. You never see the river.
Yeah.
Writing a physical letter, on the other hand, is like stopping on the bank to build a sturdy wooden bridge.
It requires architectural forethought.
Yes, it requires laying down a foundation. And once the bridge is built, you can walk across it slowly, side by side with the other person, and actually observe the water beneath you.
One method is purely reactive, and the other is intentional construction. That analogy perfectly captures the structural difference the open letter is pointing out.
Because to build that bridge, to truly know someone, requires a kind of environment that the feed actively destroys.
It requires slowness.
Yeah.
It requires the complete absence of an audience, meaning no performative pressure whatsoever.
And most importantly, it requires one person to sit in a room with zero competition for the space in their head.
Dedicating their entire cognitive apparatus to thinking about another human being for a sustained period.
Which brings us right to the sensory artifact itself. The physical nature of the letter is the literal embodiment of that sustained attention.
Look at the contrast with the digital world. I mean, the feed exists behind a piece of smooth, frictionless glass.
It's sterile.
Very sterile. But a letter is intensely physical. It is made of paper derived from wood pulp. It is made of liquid ink.
It requires a stamp that someone had to manually peel off a sheet and physically press onto the envelope.
And the imperfections are where the value lies, right?
Oh, absolutely. The text mentions this. A smudge, where the side of a hand dragged across wet ink.
Or a word cropped out because the writer changed their mind mid-sentence.
Yeah, or just the slight indentation on the back of the page where the pen was pressed down a little too hard.
In a digital environment, everything is uniformly perfect. Every A typed on a keyboard looks exactly identical to every other A.
Right, there's no character to it.
But on a handwritten page, those physical imperfections serve as undeniable forensic evidence of human presence.
So, okay, we understand how the digital feed physically rewires us for distraction through attention residue.
Right.
But I want to push back on something here, or at least, play devil's advocate for the listener.
Go for it.
If communication is really just about getting an idea from my head into your head,
Okay.
why does the physical mechanic of a pen on paper matter so much? Why does the open letter insist the act of writing actually wires us for deep attention?
That's a fair question.
Because, theoretically, a really long, thoughtful email could do the exact same thing, couldn't it?
That is a very common assumption, but the open letter from the Postal Club draws a very stark line in the sand regarding this.
Oh, how so?
It argues that a letter is not simply a slow email. It is not a long text message.
Okay.
In fact, it pushes the envelope, no pun intended, by suggesting that a letter isn't really a form of communication at all, at least not in the utilitarian way we usually use that word.
Wait, how is a letter not communication?
Because we typically define communication as the efficient transfer of information.
Right, like, I need you to pick up milk on the way home.
Exactly. Or the meeting is moved to 3 p.m. That is communication.
So what is a letter then?
The source defines a true letter as an act of attention made physical.
An act of attention made physical.
Wow. Just consider the mechanics required. To write a letter, you must isolate yourself from the chaos of your day.
You have to physically sit down.
You silence the phone, you place a blank sheet of paper in front of you, you pick up a pen, and from that precise moment until you sign your name at the bottom, you are holding another human being in your mind.
You aren't thinking about your own performance metrics. You aren't crafting a persona for a potential audience of thousands.
No, you are thinking exclusively of the recipient.
You are imagining their internal state, their sense of humor, their struggles.
And the words on the page are really just the exhaust fumes of that intense concentration.
That's a great way to look at it. The concentration itself is the primary act.
Exactly. And the physical tool, the pen, is the governor of that concentration.
Governor, it controls the speed.
Yes. This is where the neurobiology of writing comes into play. When you are typing a text message or an email, your fingers can move almost simultaneously with your thoughts.
Oh, for sure. You are essentially just transcribing an internal monologue as quickly as it occurs.
But the pen is inherently slower than the mind. Handwriting is a complex, fine motor skill.
Yeah, you have to physically construct every single letter loop by loop, line by line.
So what happens in that cognitive delay?
What do you mean?
That gap between how fast you can think and how fast you can write.
The open letter argues that in that specific gap, something deeply honest surfaces.
Yes. Because you cannot transcribe every fleeting thought at the speed of light, your brain is forced into an editorial filtering process.
You have to evaluate the thought, weigh its truth, and construct the sentence in your mind before the ink ever hits the paper.
You don't just record what you already believe. The friction of the process actually helps you discover what you feel.
Because you can't hit backspace. That's the power of commitment.
Exactly.
I mean, if I'm writing an email, I might delete a sentence 15 times.
Oh, easily.
I can curate the emotion, sanitize it, strip out all the vulnerability until it's perfectly safe and detached.
But with a pen, you must commit to the sentence as it flows out.
If you write something emotionally raw, you can't just unpress the keys. You have to cross it out, leaving a physical scar on the page, or you just have to keep going.
And the source points out that commitment is inherently clarifying.
And once that commitment is made, it results in an object of permanence.
A letter has weight.
It absorbs the scent of the room it was written in.
Yes. It can be folded, placed in a jacket pocket, carried around a city for a week.
And then kept in a wooden drawer for half a century to be found by a grandchild.
So screen is ephemeral by design, right? The moment you swipe away a text, it ceases to exist in your visual field.
But a letter insists on existing in physical space.
This completely reframes how we look at history, too.
Oh, the part about archaeology. Yes, the text points out something fascinating about historical research.
Tell them about the historical context, because it's brilliant.
When historians want to understand the true emotional reality of a past century, they don't rely solely on official government decrees or public speeches.
No, because those are performative.
Exactly. They go straight to the letters. Because letters are where the truth lived.
It's where people spoke candidly, slowly, to one specific person who they deeply trusted.
The letters are where the actual life of a society is recorded. I mean, try to imagine an archaeologist in the year 2150 finding a decrypted server full of Slack messages and weeping over the profound humanity of it.
It's an absurd thought, honestly.
It really is. It just doesn't happen.
And it highlights a bleak truth about our digital output. We are generating more text than any human generation in history, but very little of it possesses the emotional weight to endure.
By dedicating that unbroken time to a single person, the letter writer creates an artifact infused with a massive amount of emotional density.
The slowness isn't an inefficiency we need to solve.
No.
The slowness is the entire point. It is the active ingredient.
So we've talked extensively about the object itself and what it means to the person receiving it. It's an incredible gift.
It really is.
But the open letter from the Postal Club makes a brilliant pivot here, a really surprising argument.
Yeah, this part caught me off guard in the best way.
It suggests that the person who derives the absolute most benefit from this exchange isn't the recipient.
It's actually the writer.
Which is wild to think about.
This was perhaps the most profound psychological insight in the manifesto for me. It explores the concept of the stillness of writing.
The stillness.
Yeah. When you commit to writing a letter by hand, a very specific psychological state descends upon you.
The document compares it to the stillness of drawing a portrait.
Or the quiet anticipation of fishing.
Right. It is a highly focused, localized state where the anxieties of the broader world just recede.
And the perimeter of your reality shrinks down to just the edges of the paper.
And let's be honest, that state of mind is basically extinct for most of us today.
Tragically extinct.
We are so rarely allowed to just do one thing.
Hey, if we are watching TV, we are also on our phones.
If we are cooking, we are listening to a podcast.
Exactly. But letter writing demands a monopoly on your senses.
And the open letter identifies 3 very specific transformations that happen to the writer when they enter that stillness. Let's go through them.
The first transformation is clear thinking.
Which we kind of touched on with the cognitive delay.
Right. As we discussed with the delay of the pen, the act of choosing words that cannot be easily unsaid acts as a powerful clarifier.
Because if your anxieties or opinions were vague and cloudy before you sat down,
The physical act of articulating them for an audience of one forces them to solidify.
you quite literally discover your own mind.
Exactly. What's the second transformation?
The second thing that happens, and I genuinely love this point, is that the writer becomes, briefly, a better version of themselves.
That is so true. Think about it. It is incredibly difficult to be petty or vindictive in a handwritten letter.
It's nearly impossible to be performative.
On social media, you are broadcasting to an abstract crowd, which practically encourages posturing, snark, and hyperbole.
But in a letter, your audience is exactly one person who already knows your flaws. They know what you sound like.
So fake outrage or posturing just falls completely flat.
The medium itself draws out a natural tenderness. The source describes it as drawing out the slightly more grown-up self.
The grown-up self that lives inside all of us, but is constantly shouted down by the frantic pace of modern life.
I love that phrasing. It provides a desperately needed social framework.
Yeah, the manifesto talks about this concept of inner weather.
Inner weather. Let's unpack that.
Well, every human being is walking around with complex inner weather, right?
Like turbulent anxieties, sudden sunny bursts of pride, lingering fogs of doubt.
Exactly. We desperately want to share this weather, and we genuinely want to know about the weather of the people we love.
But society just doesn't offer a great framework for it anymore.
No, it doesn't. Texting is too fast and trivial.
Phone calls carry a heavy burden of immediate verbal response. I mean, you can't easily sit in silence on a phone call.
It gets awkward fast. And dinner parties are just full of interruptions and group dynamics.
Exactly. A letter accidentally solves the entire logistical problem of deep connection.
Because it is a format that quietly gives you permission to say more than you would normally say out loud.
It allows you to speak in a register that is slightly more honest, slightly more poetic than your everyday speaking voice.
And it does so knowing that the other person has implicitly agreed to read it carefully on their own time without the pressure of having to instantly reply.
Which perfectly leads to the third major benefit for the writer: the act of remembering your own life.
Remembering your own life. Writing a letter acts as a form of personal accounting.
Right. By sitting down to tell someone else what you've been doing, what you've been thinking about, what media moved you.
Or what small moments brought you joy.
Yeah, you are actually telling yourself.
The open letter argues quite directly that people who write letters simply know their own lives better than people who don't.
Because they have forced themselves to articulate their existence.
Which prevents the years from blurring into one giant, unexamined rush.
So, bringing this back to you, the listener, what does this all mean for us today, practically speaking, in the middle of a culture that absolutely worships efficiency?
It means we have to make a hard choice.
To sit down for 40 minutes on a Tuesday evening, to turn away from the screens and produce something that has absolutely no measurable economic output.
Something that cannot be optimized, scaled, or posted online for algorithmic validation.
It's an act of quiet rebellion. It is totally countercultural.
It is the practice of slowness as a rigorous discipline. Novelists, psychotherapists, and monastics have understood this for centuries.
Understood what exactly?
That the blank page is one of the only places where you can actually hear yourself think.
Yeah.
The end product, the mailed letter, is wonderful, but the practice itself is the point.
The source argues that this active, engaged stillness is increasingly the only kind of rest that genuinely rehabilitates a harried, chronically overstimulated nervous system.
Because watching 3 hours of streaming video isn't actually rest, it's passive stimulation.
Right. But letter writing is active rest.
Exactly, active rest.
Now, if this practice is as deeply rewarding and restorative as the open letter claims, you have to wonder, who were the people who actually maintained this habit?
Right, because it's easy to assume this is just something people did when they lived on different continents and had literally no other options.
But the document reveals a hidden history of people who formed a bridge across time, people who never stopped writing, even when other faster technologies were available.
The text highlights several famous correspondents to prove exactly that point.
Yeah, let's talk about some of those examples.
Take the relationship between C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien.
Oh, this blew my mind.
These are two of the most monumental literary figures of the 20th century. They both lived in Oxford.
They worked at the same university.
They literally lived a short walk from each other and drank at the exact same pub.
Right. The geography was not an obstacle at all. If they wanted to talk, they could just walk down the street.
Exactly. But they wrote letters to each other for decades.
Why? If they could just talk?
Because the letters were not a substitute for verbal conversation. They served an entirely different cognitive function.
Oh, I see.
By writing to each other, each man secured the space to think out loud, deeply and thoroughly, without the immediate interruption or pushback of speech.
That makes so much sense. The receiver could read the argument, sit with it for a day, let his own thoughts marinate,
And respond only when he had formulated a worthy counterargument.
the entire intellectual exchange unfolded at the natural pace of considered thought, rather than the rapid-fire reactive pace of verbal debate.
The source also brings up the correspondence between Vita Sackville West and Virginia Woolf.
They wrote hundreds of letters back and forth, right?
Hundreds. And these letters contain some of the most vibrant, extraordinary love writing in the English language.
And again, they saw each other frequently. They moved in the exact same social circles.
But they chose to write because, as the open letter notes, there are specific truths, specific vulnerabilities that can only be articulated in the quiet safety of a letter.
And then the document shifts to a much darker but incredibly profound historical example. Hannah Arendt and Karl Jaspers.
Yeah, she was a brilliant political philosopher, and he was her former mentor.
They sustained this deep, complex correspondence through the devastating rupture of the Second World War and its aftermath.
For them, writing letters wasn't a quaint hobby. It was a structural necessity.
It was a way to maintain their humanity.
Exactly, to insist on remaining thinking, analytical human beings inside a century that was violently hostile to human dignity and deep thought.
The letters were a lifeline, holding them above the abyss.
But, you know, the manifesto doesn't just focus on the famous intellectuals.
No, it pays a really beautiful, moving tribute to ordinary people. The unknown correspondence.
It talks about soldiers sitting in the mud in terrifying places, folding a single page torn from a notebook.
Writing words that a spouse back home would keep in a lockbox for the rest of her life.
It mentions immigrants who crossed oceans, writing to parents they knew they would likely never see in person again.
It talks about people who never thought of themselves as writers, who would never publish a book,
but whose heartfelt, scrawled words survive for decades in the linings of old coats or the backs of bedside drawers.
And if we contrast that historical reality with the architecture of our modern digital algorithms, I mean, what does the feed do?
The algorithm is designed to trap us in a mirror.
Yes. It shows us content created by people who look exactly like us.
People who vote like us and buy the same products as us. It reinforces our existing bubbles.
But the letter is an effortless, unalgorithmic bridge.
It is a technology that effortlessly bridges a person sitting in an apartment in Glasgow with someone in a cafe in São Paulo.
Or a retired school teacher in their 70s with a 22-year-old student.
There is no software acting as a middleman, deciding what portions of their humanity they are allowed to share.
Now, I can hear a skeptic listening to this right now. Someone might be thinking, look, this is all very poetic, but isn't it just nostalgia?
The nostalgia argument?
Yeah. Isn't this just romanticizing a bygone era because we are stressed out by modern life?
The open letter anticipates and directly dismantles that exact skepticism.
How does it do that?
It makes a forceful argument that this is absolutely not about nostalgia.
Yep.
It is not suggesting that we should write letters simply because people in the 19th century did it and we want to, play dress up.
Right. It's not cosplay.
Exactly. The argument is entirely functional. The technology of the letter, the pen, the physical paper, the postal system works.
It is a highly effective, proven mechanism for producing slow, undivided, empathetic attention.
The fact that this technology happens to be old is entirely incidental to its value.
Oh, that's a great point.
We don't use a hammer because we are nostalgic for the Iron Age. We use a hammer because it is still the best tool for driving a nail.
And the letter is still the best tool for driving deep human connection. I love that.
Okay, so if we accept the premise, we understand the historical weight, the neurological benefits, the psychological clarity.
The listener is fully on board.
But then the practical logistics hit. The excuses bubble up.
Oh, yeah. I love this idea, but I barely have time to do my laundry, let alone sit down with a quill and parchment.
Plus, my handwriting is an absolute disaster.
Right. The manifesto knows we are going to do this, and it does an incredible job of systematically removing the friction.
Let's tackle those roadblocks exactly the way the source does, starting with the most common one. I don't have the time.
The reality check the document provides here is a bit brutal, but entirely necessary.
Yeah, a standard, thoughtful letter takes about 40 minutes to write.
And most of us, if you look at the screen time analytics on our phones, spend vastly more than 40 minutes a day endlessly scrolling through apps.
Apps that actively degrade our mood and increase our anxiety.
So objectively, time is not the limiting factor. Allocation is the issue.
Choosing to carve out 40 minutes once a week, or even just once a fortnight, to sit in stillness is a minuscule investment of total hours that yields a massive psychological return.
And what about the physical insecurity? The objection that my handwriting is terrible and illegible.
This might be my favorite reframe in the entire document.
Oh, me too.
The source tells us to stop thinking of our handwriting as a font that needs to be perfectly typeset.
Right. It compares messy handwriting in a letter to a slight regional accent in a human voice.
That is such a beautiful way to look at it. It's just the physical manifestation of how you sound.
The person receiving it isn't a school teacher with a red pen grading your penmanship.
Seeing your crossed out words, your sloping margins, and your chaotic cursive will actually endear them to you.
Because it is an authentic physical extension of your body.
Then comes the cognitive block. I wouldn't know what to say. I don't have anything profound to report.
Which is such a modern fear, isn't it?
It is. The open letter insists that this is a misconception born from social media, where we feel we only need to broadcast major life events.
Right, like engagements, vacations, promotions.
But you aren't broadcasting in a letter, you are conversing.
The source advises you to just start with the last interaction you had with that person. What was the question you thought of after you left the coffee shop? Start there.
And then it gives this incredible piece of advice. Somewhere in the body of the letter, add one true sentence.
One true sentence.
Say something honest that you wouldn't typically have the courage or the context to say out loud in casual conversation.
Because the physical distance and the delayed delivery of the letter provide a natural cover for vulnerability.
Exactly. Now, the final major psychological hurdle is the fear of unreciprocated effort.
What if I pour my heart into this 40-minute letter, send it off, and they never write back?
The manifesto addresses this by fundamentally redefining the nature of the act. We are conditioned to view communication as a rapid transaction.
I text, you text back.
Right. But a letter is a gift, not a transaction.
The primary reward is the 40 minutes of stillness, the cognitive clarification, and the peace you experienced while writing it.
The act of sending it is just releasing it. If you get a beautiful letter in return 3 weeks later, that is a wonderful bonus.
But it is not the prerequisite for the activity being valuable.
So let's get into the physical logistics. How do we set ourselves up for success?
Because removing friction in our environment is the only way to actually build a new habit.
When it comes to paper, the open letter is very democratic. Literally anything works.
Yeah, if all you have is a torn piece of lined paper from a spiral notebook or the blank back of a printed receipt, use it. The words are what matter.
However, the document notes that if you want to elevate the practice from a chore into a genuine ritual, investing in the right materials changes the sensory experience.
It becomes a tactile pleasure.
The source recommends finding plain cream A5 sheets or slightly textured writing paper.
When you use paper that has a heavier weight, a slight creaminess that is gentler on the eyes than bright white printer paper.
And a texture you can actually feel dragging slightly against the nib of the pen. It elevates the entire act.
It signals to your brain that what you are doing is an occasion, not an administrative task.
And the same goes for the pen. Use whatever you have. A cheap plastic biro you stole from a bank will transfer ink to paper just fine.
But the document suggests that utilizing a rollerball, or even better, a fountain pen, introduces a small, continuous mechanical pleasure to the act of writing.
A fountain pen requires a specific angle, a certain lightness of touch. It flows differently.
It's an instrument that you actively enjoy holding, which dramatically lowers the barrier to sitting down and doing the work.
But the most insidious point of friction isn't the writing, is it?
No, it's the sending. The source places heavy emphasis on the logistics of the envelope and the stamp.
Imagine you spend an hour writing a deeply moving letter. You fold it up, and then you realize you don't have an envelope or you don't have any stamps.
You tell yourself you'll go to the post office tomorrow.
Tomorrow becomes next week. The letter dies on your desk,
Right.
and you feel a sense of failure.
It's exactly the same psychological friction as trying to build a gym habit.
Oh, that's a perfect comparison.
Right. If your alarm goes off at 6 a.m. and you have to dig through a dark closet to find your running shoes and untangle your headphones, you are going back to sleep.
Every time.
But if your shoes are tied and waiting directly in front of the door, you'll go.
The open letter says you must keep envelopes and stamps clearly visible in the exact same drawer as your stationery. Remove the friction of the final step.
And then establish a rhythm. Doesn't have to be daily. Once a week, once a fortnight, even once a month on a Sunday morning.
A slow, steady rhythm maintained over a year will fundamentally alter your baseline level of anxiety.
What is truly fascinating about this entire logistical breakdown is that modern consumer culture has brainwashed us into believing that every process must be frictionless, instant, and fully optimized.
Yeah, everything has to be one click.
Right. But reclaiming our attention requires us to intentionally embrace physical friction.
Walking down the street to find a red postbox, licking the adhesive on an envelope.
We have to retrain our brains to understand that The physical effort involved isn't an obstacle to the value.
The effort is the value.
So you're sitting at your desk. You have the heavy cream paper. You have a pen that feels good in your hand. You have a stamp ready to go. You've conquered all the excuses.
But there's one final, very real obstacle.
What if you were listening to this and thinking, I would love to do this, but I literally do not have a single person in my life who would understand or appreciate receiving a handwritten letter from me?
This is where the open letter from the Postal Club offers a concrete, structural solution.
Yes, tell us about this.
The text explains that the Postal Club itself was built specifically for this exact scenario.
Right.
It is a quiet, curated online home for people from all walks of life who still appreciate the tactile reality of paper, the deliberate choosing of a stamp.
And the small, undeniable miracle of opening a physical envelope addressed by hand. I want to make sure everyone listening catches this because it's an incredible resource. You can find them directly by going to thepostalclub.com.
And what struck me in the manifesto's description of this community is how aggressively normal they are.
Yes, the source goes out of its way to clarify that the members of this club are not anti-technology Luddites.
They aren't people living in cabins refusing to use Wi-Fi, and they aren't historical reenactors obsessed with nostalgia.
Many of them are software engineers, digital marketers, and modern professionals who spend 8 to 10 hours a day staring at glowing screens.
They are deeply embedded in the digital world, but they have simply diagnosed their own digital exhaustion. They realized they needed a counterbalance.
And the community spans across continents and generations. You have 25-year-olds in Tokyo writing to 75-year-olds in London.
And because they are matched through this club, there is no algorithmic feed pushing outrage at them. There is no monetization of their personal data.
The exchange of addresses is entirely private, handled between two individuals who have mutually agreed to slow down and share their inner weather.
It provides the vital missing ingredient for people who want to practice this discipline but lack the social network to facilitate it.
But whether you write to a stranger through the club or to your own sister, the open letter wants you to take action.
Which brings us to the challenge.
Yes. If you are listening to this deep dive, we want you to start writing a real physical letter this week.
To make it as easy as possible, the open letter from the Postal Club includes a brilliant appendix.
It lists 5 specific writing prompts designed to instantly bypass awkward small talk and get straight to the marrow of human connection.
I want us to go through all 5 of these in detail because they are incredibly well crafted.
Okay, let's do it. What's the first one?
The first prompt is to select someone in your life who is significantly older than you. A parent, an uncle, a mentor.
Okay.
But instead of asking them for generic life advice or historical facts, write to them and ask what they were privately worrying about or quietly hoping for when they were your exact current age.
Oh, wow. What was the inner weather they were experiencing but unable to say out loud back then?
Ex-
That is breathtaking. Think about the empathy that builds. You suddenly realize your stoic 70-year-old father was just as terrified and lost at 35 as you are right now.
It changes everything. Now, the second prompt. Write to someone you have completely lost touch with. An old college roommate, a childhood friend.
Okay, that sounds intimidating.
It does, but there's a strict rule here. Absolutely no apologies for the silence.
Oh, that's smart.
Right. Don't waste a single line of ink explaining why you haven't written in 5 years or feeling guilty. Just bypass the guilt entirely.
So what do you write about?
Share one good, true thing that has happened to you recently and ask one highly specific question about a passion or trait you remember about them.
It acts as an instant bridge over the awkwardness of elapsed time.
Exactly.
I love that. Okay, what's the third prompt?
The third prompt turns the focus entirely inward. Write a letter to your future self, exactly 10 years from today.
A letter to yourself in the future.
But don't make it a list of grand career goals. Note the specific textures of your life right now. Write down your trivial daily worries. Write down the small things you are quietly proud of.
And then what?
Seal it in an envelope, write the opening day on the front, and bury it in a box of vital documents. When you open it in a decade, it will serve as a profound anchor to who you used to be.
The fourth prompt is an exercise in pure, unrequited gratitude. Write to a stranger.
A stranger.
Yeah, choose an author who wrote a book that changed your perspective, a musician, or just someone in your community whose quiet kindness you observed.
Tell them exactly how their work or their action impacted you.
But the key is to send it without leaving a return address or expecting any reply whatsoever.
The source notes that some of the most emotionally significant letters residing in the archives of famous artists are exactly these kinds of unprompted, no strings attached letters of gratitude.
And finally, the fifth prompt. Write to a close friend about something they have no idea is currently going on with you.
The text is careful to say this doesn't need to be a melodramatic, earth-shattering confession.
Right. It could just be a small, honest observation about a minor struggle you're having or a new obscure interest you've developed.
The goal is to see what surfaces in your own mind as you attempt to articulate a hidden piece of your life to someone who already trusts you.
I have to turn the tables and ask you directly.
Okay, shoot.
Of those 5 prompts, if you had your pen and paper sitting in front of you tonight, which one would you personally choose to tackle first, and why?
As an analytical person, I would definitely gravitate toward the first prompt writing to someone older to ask about their private worries at my current age.
That's a great choice. Why that one?
What fascinates me about all of these prompts, but that one specifically, is how surgically they cut through the superficial layer of modern communication.
They force a level of vulnerability that is very safe because it is encased in the structure of the letter.
Exactly. They prove the thesis of the open letter perfectly. You do not need to be living a life of extraordinary adventure or drama to write a deeply meaningful letter.
You simply need to deploy extraordinary attention to the ordinary details of life.
Extraordinary attention, that really is the thesis of the whole document.
And the perfect summary of what we've uncovered today. To tie this whole journey together, the pervasive modern loneliness we feel in our bones isn't derived from a lack of visibility.
No, we are the most visible, most photographed, most observed generation in the history of the human race.
We are seen by thousands of people on our screens. Our loneliness comes from being unknown.
And a physical letter is the ultimate cure because it provides the undeniable, tangible evidence that for 40 minutes, another human being sat in a quiet room, held the frantic chaos of the world at bay, and thought only of you.
And before we wrap up, we need to connect the mechanical reality of this practice to a much broader implication for how we live.
The source revealed that the sheer physical slowness of handwriting doesn't just record our thoughts. It produces more honest, considered thoughts.
It clarifies our murky beliefs, and crucially, it acts as a cooling mechanism for our highly reactive emotions.
Which leads to a really provocative thought I want to leave you with, something to chew on after this deep dive is over.
What if we actively apply this concept of a mandatory analog delay to the most volatile, high-stakes parts of our modern lives?
Imagine if society had a rule. Before you were allowed to dramatically quit a job or end a long-term relationship,
Or post a furious, vitriolic response to an outrage-inducing headline on the feed?
you had to physically sit down and write out your grievances in blue ink on paper.
You had to fold that paper, put it in an envelope, and let it sit on your desk overnight.
The psychological implications of that are staggering.
How much of our modern anxiety, how much of our fractured social discourse, and how much of our interpersonal conflict would simply evaporate in the quiet gap between the blistering, instantaneous speed of the digital world?
And the grounded biological slowness of the human hand.
It raises a profound question about how much of our daily stress is literally just a byproduct of moving too fast to hear ourselves think.
It is such a powerful lens through which to view our daily habits.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the lost art of the slow letter.
I strongly encourage you tonight to step out of the strange new weather. Pick up a pen.
If you need a recipient, or if you just want to explore a community built entirely around this quiet rebellion, head over to thepostalclub.com.
Choose one of those 5 prompts, embrace the friction, and discover what surfaces in the stillness.
And tomorrow morning, when you walk to your front door, imagine looking down at the doormat and finding that tiny, unmistakable heartbeat waiting just for you. Keep diving, and we'll see you next time.